Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. Representatives from the U.S. Marshals Service say that a 58-year-old fugitive is finally back in custody this week, nearly 5 years after he escaped from a federal prison in Colorado. Back in 2012, Alan Todd May was sentenced to 20 years in prison after he was convicted of mail fraud in Texas. He served time there for several years until January of 2018, when he was transferred to the Federal Correctional Institute in Englewood, Colorado. 11 months later, he managed to escape the facility after somehow driving off in a Bureau of Prisons work truck. His disappearance reportedly wasn't noticed until an inmate count, by which time May had switched vehicles twice and fled the state. Over the next few years, authorities received numerous leads about May's possible whereabouts in states including California, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Texas, but were unable to locate him. However, that finally changed in July of this year when an anonymous tipster pointed police in the direction of a photo resembling May that had been published by the news outlet the Palm Beach Daily News. He was going by the name Jacob Turner, an alias of May's that investigators had not encountered up until this point. The tip led police to an apartment in Palm Beach, Florida, where U.S. Marshals were able to find May's partner. They followed them to a second residence in Fort Lauderdale, where they found the 58-year-old fugitive and placed him under arrest. Despite being a wanted man, authorities now say that May was hardly keeping a low profile. The house he was living in at the time of his arrest was valued at over $1.5 million. There was a luxury car in the driveway, and he had a Rolex watch on his wrist. According to reports, May funded his lifestyle, at least in part, with a second fraud scheme, which he had started before escaping from prison. While behind bars in 2016, he allegedly identified several business entities that were owed unclaimed oil and gas royalties and proceeded to file fraudulent documents claiming to be these companies' representative. The scheme reportedly netted May at least $700,000. Last year, while his whereabouts were still unknown, he was charged with 10 counts of wire fraud and 7 counts of mail fraud in connection with that crime. At the time of this recording, May is awaiting extradition back to Colorado. Authorities say that more charges are likely coming, and that right now they are investigating what other crimes he may have committed while on the run. Authorities in Memphis, Tennessee say that a 45-year-old man is facing multiple charges this week, nearly 17 years after he was reportedly involved in a violent robbery where he ended up losing a finger at the scene. According to reports, the crime took place all the way back on the night of November 4th, 2006, when 2 armed men with handguns kicked down the door to a residence in the city's Fox Meadows neighborhood. Once inside, the suspects fired several shots, demanding money from the 8 men that were there at the time. 4 victims had their cash and wallets stolen, while another of them was pistol-whipped and dragged unconscious into a front room of the house. However, things reportedly took a wild turn when this victim woke up, managed to grab a, quote, long saber-type sword, and fought back, cutting one of his attacker's fingers off. The 2 suspects then fled the house, firing as they left. During a subsequent investigation of the scene, authorities were able to recover the severed digit, the prints from which were run through the police database. It apparently came back as a match to a man named Terrence Stewart. While this identification was made within days of the crime taking place, it appears that Stewart was only just arrested for the crime recently, nearly 17 years later. It's not clear why this is the case, though according to reports, the now 45-year-old is facing 4 counts each of aggravated robbery and attempted aggravated robbery, plus a burglary charge. Representatives from the Alaska State Troopers say that they are investigating the aftermath of a tragic shooting this week after one child fatally shot another during the midst of what was supposed to be a toy gunfight. According to reports, the incident began at around 1:45 a.m. on July 30th, when police were called to a residence in the small community of Mountain Village, roughly 460 miles west of Anchorage. Officers arrived to find that one child had shot another with a rifle at the home, and sadly the victim had succumbed to their injuries before they could even get there. It's now alleged that the two children involved in the incident, whose names and ages have not been released, were playing with Nerf guns at the time when one of them picked up a real rifle and shot the other. There was an adult inside the residence at the time, though it's unclear if they are the owner of the weapon. At the time of this recording, few additional details about the case have been released. Police have not specified whether they believe the shooting was accidental or not, though currently the situation is still under investigation and no charges have yet been filed. Authorities in Douglas County, Nevada say that a 26-year-old California man has been arrested in connection with a pair of strange and creepy incidents this week after he was allegedly caught breaking into the homes of two women to touch their feet. According to Douglas County investigators, the two crimes unfolded sometime between July 1st and 3rd, when the suspect, 26-year-old Mark Gonzalez, snuck into resort condos belonging to the two female victims near Lake Tahoe. In both cases, Gonzalez allegedly came in through unlocked screen doors in the middle of the night, positioned himself at the foot of the victim's bed, and began fondling their feet. When the women woke up and confronted him, he fled. Police say that Gonzalez was arrested at his home in Merced County, California on August 1st after undisclosed forensic techniques were used to link him to the crimes. While the 26-year-old is now facing 2 counts of burglary and 2 counts of battery in connection with the July incidents, apparently this is not the first time he has been investigated for similar offenses. Authorities in California say that he had previously committed a series of crimes there too, during which he allegedly stole women's shoes, trespassed, and engaged in self-gratification. Following Gonzalez's arrest this week, Douglas County Sheriff Dan Coverly said that he was pleased that they had been able to identify and locate him, noting that it appeared the 26-year-old's behavior was escalating prior to being caught. An elderly Maine woman showed some serious compassion, understanding, and quite frankly, badass behavior this week after she fought off a violent intruder in her home and then fed him a snack before calling police. It all started at around 2 a.m. on July 26th when 87-year-old Marjorie Perkins awoke to a terrifying situation in her Brunswick home. A teenage boy was standing over her bed, and when he realized she was awake, he said, quote, "I'm going to cut you." Immediately, Marjorie decided that no matter what happened, she was going to put up a fight. She jumped into her shoes, started kicking, and grabbed a chair to defend herself. The tactic worked. Though she wasn't able to deflect all of the suspect's blows, the chair took the brunt of the hits, and eventually the teen stopped. Evidently tired from the attack, he proceeded to walk into the kitchen, where he mentioned that he hadn't eaten for quite some time. Marjorie took out some honey crackers, peanut butter, 2 containers of Ensure, and a couple of tangerines and handed them over to the suspect before calling 911. Though the teen fled the scene before officers arrived, he left behind a good chunk of his belongings in Marjorie's bedroom. It turned out that he had broken in by removing a panel from her in-window air conditioning unit and then squeezing through the gap. A police dog was used to track the suspect, who was arrested a few blocks away. He was later taken to the Long Creek Youth Development Center in South Portland and is now facing charges including burglary, criminal threatening, assault, and consuming liquor as a minor. While the suspect's name has not been released due to his age, Marjorie says that he is a 17-year-old boy who she recognized from the area because he had once mowed her lawn about 10 years ago to make extra money. In an interview following the crime, she said, quote, "He did a darn good job. I hope he gets help." Authorities in Hernando County, Florida say that a teenage suspect is facing multiple charges this week after he allegedly carried out a burglary at a business where he was formerly employed, but was busted by his rather distinctive choice of footwear. According to reports, the incident began back on July 20th when police were called about a burglary at a bakery called Crumble Cookies in the city of Brooksville. Someone had stolen a large sum of money from both the business's safe and cash register. Fortunately, it didn't take very long to figure out what had happened when the store's manager reviewed surveillance camera footage taken at the time of the crime. The video showed a suspect dressed in a black mask, black sweatshirt, black pants, a brown and black backpack, and a pair of bright red Crocs. The shoes looked an awful lot like the ones a former employee of theirs always used to wear, 18-year-old Jacob Ortega. Upon reviewing the surveillance footage further, police also spotted a vehicle leaving the parking lot around the time of the burglary, which happened to belong to one of Ortega's friends. During questioning, the friend said that at around 2 a.m. on the morning of the crime, the 18-year-old had asked him for a ride to the area. He had called to be picked up nearby a short time later. Finally, the friend directed police to the glove compartment of the vehicle, where Ortega had allegedly stashed some of the money from the burglary. On August 1st, police brought Ortega in for questioning, who reportedly confessed to what had happened. He said that he decided to steal from the bakery because they hadn't changed the access codes to their side door, safe, or register, and he still remembered them from when he worked there. The 18-year-old also reportedly admitted that he had blown the rest of the cash police hadn't recovered on food and alcohol for him and his friends. Ortega is now facing charges including burglary, grand theft, and unlawful use of a two-way communications device. Unfortunately, it appears that no charges can be pressed against him for purchasing or intentionally wearing a pair of Crocs. Representatives from the FBI say that they are investigating a 29-year-old man this week following an extremely chilling incident in which he allegedly kidnapped and assaulted a woman before attempting to imprison her in a homemade jail cell. According to reports, the unidentified victim's harrowing ordeal began at around midnight on July 14th when she was approached by the suspect, 29-year-old Nagassi Zuberi, in Seattle. After soliciting sex from the woman, Zuberi allegedly posed as an undercover police officer, pulling out a fake badge and taser. By the time the victim realized that something was off, it was already too late. She was handcuffed in the back of his vehicle. Following the kidnapping, Zuberi drove more than 7 hours to his home in Klamath Falls, Oregon, stopping several times along the way to sexually assault the victim. When they arrived at his residence, he led her to a makeshift jail cell that he had created out of cinder blocks and other construction materials, imprisoning her before telling her that he was leaving to do some paperwork. The woman briefly slept, though upon waking realized that she would likely die here if she didn't act quickly. After banging on the cell's door as hard as she could for some time, she managed to break it open, grab Zuberi's gun from his car in the garage, and escape. She later flagged down a passing motorist who called police. By the time officers arrived at the residence, Zuberi was nowhere to be found. However, they quickly stumbled across the homemade jail cell. Other chilling discoveries were also soon made, including a notepad where the 29-year-old allegedly laid out his plans for the kidnapping. Bullet points under a note titled Operation Takeover read, quote, "Leave phone at home," and "Make sure they don't have a bunch of people in their life. You don't want any type of investigation." Another page of the notepad appeared to show plans for another, much more elaborate jail cell that Zuberi apparently wanted to create 100 feet underground. On July 16th, Zuberi was located in a Walmart parking lot in Reno, Nevada with his wife and children. At the time police arrived, he was holding one of the children inside of his vehicle and refused to come out. He also cut himself with a sharp object and attempted to destroy his phone. However, eventually police were able to negotiate his surrender. Zuberi is now facing charges including kidnapping and transportation with intent to engage in sexual activity. More charges could soon be coming though, as the FBI says that they do not believe the woman targeted in this most recent incident was the 29-year-old's first victim. They are now investigating the situation further and say that so far they have linked Zuberry to incidents in California, Nevada, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and New York. It's believed that in other crimes he may have used the aliases Sakima, Justin Heitch, or Justin Kouassi. The situation is still developing. Representatives from the Ohio State Highway Patrol say that a man and woman are both dead this week following a dangerous vehicle pursuit that turned into an hours-long hostage situation. The incident began at around 1 a.m. on August 2nd, when an officer with the London Police Department attempted to conduct a traffic stop on Lafayette Street after spotting a van with burnt-out taillights and no visible registration. Things went sideways when the driver provided false information to the officer, after which he and his female passenger sped away from the scene, prompting a chase. When the van pulled into a truck stop on State Route 42, police attempted to arrest the male and female suspect, only for them to get out and begin running across the parking lot. At one point, an officer was almost able to deploy a stun gun on the man. However, he pulled out a handgun and pointed it at the officer before continuing to run away. The pair then hijacked a semi-truck without a trailer, taking the driver hostage and speeding off, prompting a second chase. The pursuit continued west for some time until authorities managed to stop the semi-truck on an access road off of Interstate 70, right near the Dayton International Airport. Backup from several other law enforcement departments, including the Madison County Sheriff's Office, soon arrived at the scene, though the male and female suspect refused to surrender, leading to a hostage situation. The standoff lasted until about 7:30 a.m., when after hours of failed negotiations, authorities decided to move in and attempt to rescue the kidnapped truck driver. As officers approached, they were shot at, causing them to return fire. Both suspects suffered life-threatening injuries as a result of the exchange, and were later pronounced dead at a local hospital. The truck driver was also briefly hospitalized, though thankfully only suffered minor injuries. The two deceased suspects have since been identified as husband and wife, 54-year-old Rodney and 51-year-old Elaine Hellman. While an exact motive behind the crime remains unclear, sources state that the couple were addicted to painkillers and both had lengthy criminal rap sheets. This was apparently not the first time they had been involved in a dangerous pursuit with police either. According to reports, just last winter, Rodney pushed his own elderly mother from a vehicle during a bid to escape from officers during another traffic stop. In an interview with local media, one of the 54-year-old's family members also claimed that just prior to this week's incident, he had made disturbing statements, saying that he and his wife would rather die than go back to jail. At the time of this recording, the incident is still under investigation. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.